Hi there. My name is Brandon Dempsey. I own a marketing company here in St. Louis called Go Brand Go. And today we're going to talk about some of the business services you should not skimp on, or business services you really can't afford to skimp on. S-K-I-M-P, skimp on. So let's talk first about the definition of skimping as I see it. Skimping to me is choosing to spend less than you can really afford because you don't want to pay for the best that you can reasonably afford. Or also known as sometimes doing it yourself to save money when your hourly billing rate would actually cost you more if you did it. What it doesn't mean is spending more than you can really afford at the current time, or going into massive debt to try and afford a certain service or product or something like that. Skimping really is just the choice to spend less just because you're being cheap, for lack of a better term. So first of all, I want to break this down into the four functions and cornerstones of how I see and look at business. So I look at business as having finance, operations, sales, and marketing. Finance means tax, cash, cash flow, bookkeeping, billing software, bank relationships, that kind of stuff. Operations, customer service, project and product management, utilities, people, stuff like that. Sales, meals, entertainment, events, memberships, continued learning. Marketing, online elements like your website, social and search, as well as offline elements such as your business cards and events and outings and stuff like that. So first let's talk about finance. So to me, finance, when I look at what you shouldn't skimp on, first thing would be tax preparation and accounting. A bad tax return equals headaches for years to come. I promise you. One screw up by a crappy accountant and you're going to be paying for that mistake for the next 3 to 5 years. Most people think that you can save more money if you do it yourself, and it's not true. A good quality accountant, if you own a business, is going to really help you find the ways to make the most efficient use of your dollars and your bookkeeping. Which brings me to bookkeeping. If you hate reconciling numbers, you hate data entry, don't do it yourself. You can very easily find reasonably priced people to do this data type entry work for you, as well as other bookkeepers who can charge a very low rate to do it for you. At Go Brand Go, we receive all the checks and send all the invoices on our own, but the bookkeeping, like the credit card transactions and just in and out and reconciling accounts, that's all outsourced to a bookkeeper. Next, banking relationships. These are key. You got to spend time and get to know your banker. That relationship with your banker is a really important one, because while you don't need it today, if your business starts to suddenly triple in revenue, like ours did in 1 year, that banking relationship was really important when we needed to pull on that line of credit. Yes, I said line of credit. If you don't have one now, go get one set up. The best time to get credit is when you don't need it. And it's always better to have it saved for a rainy day or a growth opportunity. So if you don't have a line of credit, go get one set up now. Then an attorney. Attorneys are really important to have on your side as a partner. You got to get to know your attorney a lot, because the better they understand your business, what you don't realize is the better they understand your business, the better they can make decisions, the better they can advise you. And when you're in trouble and you need help or something is happening fast-paced, you want your attorney to really understand your business in and out so they can make those suggestions. I demand flat rate pricing on our attorneys. I think flat rate pricing is important. I don't bill by the hour, and I refuse to pay any professional by the hour. So I always demand project flat fee pricing with our attorneys, as well as all professional service firms, our accountants and everybody. And then lastly, make sure you're paying for that attorney to set up your partner agreements, setting up your contracts, setting up any other type of legal correspondence that happens between you and employees, like hiring and firing, or any other legal correspondence that happens between you and your customers. Writing a crappy contract is going to cost you a whole lot more than what it would cost to have an attorney really do it right in the first time around. Next, you got to look at the accounting software. If you're using Excel, drop it. Time to put on your big boy pants and go invest in QuickBooks, QuickBooks Online, FreshBooks. There's a ton of accounting software stuff out there, but get your business running in some sort of accounting software. And from there, set up automatic billing payments. This is really important. What we found is that by setting up those automatic invoices to be generated, even if invoices are going to be generated 6 months out for a project we're doing, having that invoice scheduled to go just helps out a ton. Lastly, accept credit cards. Yes, accept credit cards. If you're not accepting credit cards because you don't want to pay the 3% fee, get over it. It's the way that business is done today. We tried to fight it. You can't fight it. Accept credit cards, and once you realize how much business you'll be missing out because of not accepting credit cards, or the cost of chasing checks and money, take that 3%. That 3% is worth 2 months of chasing a check. I guarantee you. So take credit cards in your business, and you're going to set up that auto billing, and because guaranteed cash flow is always worth 3% in a business. Operations. Let's move on to operations. So the core business of my company is a lot of project management. So for us, a project management system is vital to our operations, which means we invested heavily in it. We use a system called MavenLink. It's pretty good. It's not cheap, but it handles a lot of functions like time tracking and communication with clients and file sharing and stuff like that. So we found it works best for our situation. We've used several other systems such as Basecamp, such as Pro Workflow. We even tried to build one on our own, and it didn't work out so well. We found that MavenLink really works the best for our needs. Point is, get your business on some sort of project management system so that you can hold people accountable and see what's happening in those projects. Next is a phone system. Phone systems, a lot of times people don't want to spend money on because they're like, well, everyone's on their cell phones. Well, that's not always the case. Have an office phone system, have that phone set up to ring, and get rid of the damn auto attendant. If you have an auto attendant and you ask people to plug in extensions, get rid of it. Every single person who calls a number, when an auto attendant picks up, what do? You cringe. So do you really want your customers cringing before they get on the phone with you? No. Get rid of the damn auto attendant and answer the phone. At Go Brand Go, we have it set that the first 8 phones ring when a call comes in, so 1 of 8 people can grab it, and we have it segmented to roll through a couple different sets of people before it goes to an auto attendant to direct it into people. Then lastly, your email, calendar, and contact hosting service is really important to have set up. You need to get this stuff preferably off-site. I'm not a big fan of self-hosted Exchange servers. Get it off-site, get it into Google Apps, get it into Microsoft 365, get it into Microsoft hosted Exchange someplace else. Just get it off your premise, because that way if something happens to your premise, the power goes out, something like that, you're still up in business, and you're not, because you tried to save money and host it yourself, you're not out of business. Because when your technology infrastructure goes down, my bet would be your business goes down. Now, let's shift a little bit and talk about cell phone plans, because that to me is part of your operations as well. Get a business plan set up. My business partner and I used to have personal plans. We were paying like $250 each a month for our cell phones. And what we did is we combined the two into a business plan. We used a company called Ascension Mobile. It helped us out a bunch, dropped our costs a bunch. Also, we set up tethering services on our phones. And a lot of times people don't want to spend the extra $10 it costs a month to do that. But we found that internet is so important at our meetings that if we don't have internet and we can't get on that client's Wi-Fi, we're in trouble. So having that tethering allows us to be able to get on and really use it and get the access to the services we need. Next is get some peer groups set up. I'm a big fan of having a couple different peer groups of people in your same industry and even in your same city. So what could be called competitors, but to me are peer groups, right? So I get together with a web development and marketing peer group every 2 months. And we share best practices, we share stories, we share billing strategies and struggles and everything else. And I've learned so much from this peer group that's really helped our business out a lot. Next, insurance. You got to have it. Most companies try and think, well, we'll fly under the radar and we don't need it, I'm a small shop. Bullshit. Get it. Set up liability insurance, set up errors and omissions insurance, and most importantly, that cyber liability policy that insurance broker is trying to sell you, it actually is worth something, and I'd recommend you get it because the amount of cyber attacks are just insane right now. Lastly, computer equipment. We use Macs because we find that there's a lot less cost of support and ongoing maintenance for them. So we prefer to use all Mac computers. We run it through a program with a store in St. Louis called Mac HQ that allows us to lease the computers so that every 2 years we're able to dump in new equipment. From there, you got to set up a good relationship with an IT firm. If you go for the cheapest IT firm to support you, you're probably going to get the cheapest service, which means they're not as smart and they take a lot longer to get done what you need to get done. Whereas if you spend a little bit more, they're actually going to spend less time getting it done, so you'll be back online, you'll be back in business quicker, but probably for about the same amount of cost because they're a lot smarter and better. So just consider that when picking your IT firm. Next, let's talk about marketing. So this is obviously my passion, but to me, marketing, you got to first start with what is the messaging, both internal and external. So internal means to our employees, external means to our clients. So how, for instance, in your business right now, do you talk about what you do, who you serve, and why you exist? What are your mission, vision, and core values? Because the core of every business, whether spoken or unspoken, there's a core set of values and mission and vision, whether you've said it and put it on a wall or whether you haven't. The only difference is if you said it and communicated it out to everybody, then you're telling people what the mission, vision, and values are of your company. If you haven't, then your employees and your customers are confused as to what you really stand for, what you really want, and what you're really working toward. It's kind of like a rudderless ship. Imagine you're the captain of a ship, sailing your ship. You got no mission and vision values, which means we basically have no rudder to steer it. We're just at the mercy of the winds, and everyone's guessing about where we're headed and where we're trying to go. So you owe it to everyone to make sure your mission, vision, values are clear to both your employees and the world. Next, think about the website. To me, websites are big because this is the majority of the first impressions you're going to make to prospects, to customers, to other people. So the average business-to-business site, B2B business, gets about 3,000 visitors a month. So let's think about that. That's 36,000 first impressions every single year. The average business-to-consumer site gets about 4,000 visitors a month. That's 48,000 first impressions a year. So if you spend $5,000 on your website, that means for 36,000 visitors, each visitor's first impression is worth you about 14 cents. If you're a business-to-consumer business, you know, an ice cream shop or pizza joint, something like that, that means you're telling me that the first impression for all your customers is only worth about 10 cents. Now, in my business, that doesn't fly. My first impression to me, I try to go by $1 a person. So if I have 36,000 new visitors hitting my site every year, then my site to me is worth $36,000. And I'm willing to spend that type of money on it because $1 a first impression is totally worth it when you only have one chance to make that first impression. And lastly, make that site mobile. In 2014, more people are hitting sites off their mobile devices than they are their computer, which means you got to buck up and just make that site mobile responsive. Next, look at your business cards. So spend some money on that design and printing. A shitty business card equals a shitty business. I'm sorry. Shitty business card, shitty business. That's how it's perceived, all right? You put that flimsy little piece of crap in someone's hand, and they're going to think you're a flimsy little piece of crap. Give them something that's real, all right? Then think about your outbound materials, your email signature, your direct mail letters that go out, your written content, your email blasts, the brochures. That stuff's got to look professional. If it looks half-baked, if it looks like, you know, your nephew down the street did it, well, is your nephew down your street running your business as well? Because that's what it looks like. So if you want to be a professional, look like a professional. Next, think about promotional items, bags, pens. Spend some little money on your name tag. I'm big on everyone at Go Brand Go having a Go Brand Go name tag because when they're out and about and they give those flimsy plastic little, you know, name tags that people put on and say, hello, my name is, yeah, they fall off, they don't stick on, it looks cheap. So spend $5 and get a professional name tag because it looks better. Lastly, let's talk about sales, all right? Sales to me comes down to time. If you're in sales, 80%, hear me out, 80% of your time should be spent out of the office. Because if you're in sales, your job is to drum up sales, 80% of your time needs to be out of that office. Lunches and coffees. Now me, preferably, I do coffees and lunches because they're cheaper than dinner, and I do a lot of them. Happy hours. If people say they want to do dinner or something, I'm like, hey, how about I grab a drink? If you're not a real close client, how about I grab a drink? Because happy hours are cheaper than dinners. Dinners to me are reserved for very, very, very close clients because those are the most costly things. So be smart about how you're spending your money. Coffees and lunches are really cheap. And then lastly, get out to the industries that your customers go to. So trade shows. You got to go to places where your customers are hanging out. Not your industry trade shows that appeal to you and your industry, but the trade shows that your customers are going and hanging out at. Then look at the associations and organizations that your customers belong to. With that, you got to think about the memberships that you have. Memberships buy access and can introduce you to your target market very closely and very quickly. So for instance, I belong to the Missouri Athletic Club here in St. Louis. I belong to Entrepreneurs Organization, which is a global organization of entrepreneurs. I belong to the Association for Corporate Growth because that's where a lot of private equity people hang out. And then I run a few private networking groups on my own. This is where my target market congregates, hangs out, socializes. And most importantly, these are the types of people that my target market, business owners, associate with. So I'm not looking at these organizations as lead gen organizations in their own right. I'm looking at these organizations to introduce me to my potential target market. And that's what's so important. And then next, you got to look at your sales process. A good sales process will close more sales and get more referrals than a process that's not defined. So if a lead comes in, you do something different for every person, your customers are confused about what the next steps are, your employees are confused as to what's going on and how things are flowing throughout the organization, and it leads to every salesperson doing stuff their own way. Whereas a standard set sales process says, here's our journey, here's our path, here's the end result, and everyone's kept up to speed all along the way. And what we found is that sales process has really allowed us to make a lot more referrals, a lot more sales. Next, look at your follow-up processes. Every person I meet with gets a handwritten thank you note. And then I constantly send out social media updates. Those are important follow-up processes. Put some time and energy into your proposals, right? A junky-looking proposal probably means you're going to get a junky-looking deliverable in the end as well. So it's that impression that's going out. And then lastly, with that, training. I spend about 2 hours a week minimum in learning how to improve my sales systems and overall tactics for my sales system and my sales processes in my company. And then I go to multiple sales conferences a year to further improve. So my final thoughts. Your customers and employees know when you're skimping, so stop. All right? You look cheap, you look stupid, and most importantly, you're losing respect because you're trying to skimp on stuff. The spending on the different parts of your business shows how much you care about those parts of that business. You've all heard the saying, follow the money. Well, it could never be more true because people, systems, and your company's future depend on smart spending. Lastly, be frugal. I hope you're not getting out of this is spend as much as you can. No, I'm not saying to be stupid. Be frugal, but don't skimp. Because all you're doing is cutting corners when you do, and it will most likely bite you in the ass later on. Cutting corners today leads to major problems down the line. So be frugal, but don't skimp. Thank you again for your time today. My name again is Brandon Dempsey with Go Brand Go. You can find me at gobrandgo.com, brandondempsey.com. If you've got any comments, jabs back at me, any final thoughts on this, please feel free to send them in to me, and I'd love to continue the conversation. Thanks.